The desert sun was merciless that day, hanging heavy over the Arizona plains like a burning coin in the sky. Dust clouds swirled around the scattered remains of a battle arrow snapped, horses gone, blood soaking into the cracked earth. In the middle of that silence lay Tala, once one of the fiercest Apache warriors in her tribe. Her long black hair was tangled with sand, and her breath came shallow and ragged. The explosion from the white men's dynamite had torn through her camp, leaving her body broken. Both her legs were gone from the knee down, bandaged crudely with torn leather. Her tribe had found her after the chaos ended. They stood over her in silence, faces painted in sorrow and fear. The shaman shook his head. "The spirits have taken her power," he said softly in Apache. "She will bring death to those who carry her." No one argued. To them, a warrior who could no longer ride, fight, or hunt was already part of the spirit world. Tala tried to speak, to beg, but her voice was nothing more than a rasp. The chief placed her bow beside her and whispered, "Go with the ancestors." Then, without another glance, they mounted their horses and rode off into the horizon. For the first time in her life, Tala felt true fear. The desert that had once been her home now became her prison. The sun scorched her skin, her lips cracked until they bled. She dragged herself across the ground toward a stream she remembered from years before. Each movement sent pain shooting through her body, but she refused to stop. Her heart beat not for survival, but for vengeance. By the second day, she had no strength left. The vultures began circling above, shadows moving slowly against the orange sky. Her knife, once her proud weapon, now served as a crawling stick, digging into the sand to pull herself forward. "If this is death," she muttered, "then I'll face it, standing." But she couldn't stand. When night came, the desert grew cold. She looked up at the stars and whispered prayers in her mother's tongue. The coyotes howled in the distance, answering like mourners. Her eyelids grew heavy, and she thought of her tribe, the children who used to dance around the fires. The women who sang of victory. They had left her, yes, but the warrior spirit in her heart would not die so easily. Just before dawn, she heard it as sound out of place, the faint echo of hooves. She thought it was a dream. The rhythmic thud grew louder, closer, until a shadow appeared against the rising sun. A man on horseback, tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a dusted hat and a leather coat. His horse stopped beside her body. The cowboy dismounted, knelt beside her, and brushed the sand from her face. Her eyes fluttered open just enough to see him. His voice was low, steady, easy. "Miss, you're safe now." But Tala, with the last bit of her strength, whispered, "No, warriors are never safe." And then, she fainted in his arms, the desert wind whispering her name like a forgotten prayer. When Tala awoke, she wasn't in the desert anymore. The air smelled of smoke, leather, and pine wood. The faint crackle of a fire reached her ears. Her eyes fluttered open to see wooden beams above her, a small cabin, built from rough logs. The pain in her body was dull but deep, and when she tried to move, a hand gently pressed her shoulder. "Don't," a low voice said. "You're safe now." She turned her head and saw him, the man from the desert, a cowboy with sunburned skin, a thick beard, and tired eyes that carried too many stories. He wore a faded shirt, his sleeves rolled up, a revolver resting by the table. His name, she would soon learn, was Samuel Hayes, a rancher who had once been a soldier. "You've been out for near 2 days," Samuel continued, handing her a cup of water. "Found you half dead in the canyon. Thought I was seeing a ghost." Tala tried to speak, her voice raw. "Why, you help?" He shrugged, his tone calm. "Couldn't just leave you there. Desert's no place for the livin'." He spoke softly but with a firmness that came from years of solitude. He changed her bandages, cleaned her wounds, and offered her broth. Though she could barely lift the spoon, he didn't show pity, only quiet respect. Tala noticed something strange about this man. He didn't ask questions about her tribe or her scars. He didn't stare at her missing legs with disgust or curiosity. Instead, he moved around her like he had seen too much pain already and didn't have room for judgment. Days passed. Samuel would tend to his horses outside, while Tala lay by the fire, wrapped in an old quilt that smelled faintly of tobacco and cedar. Each evening, he'd bring her soup and talk not to fill the silence, but to keep her tethered to life. He told her of his past, of the war he fought in, of the ranch he built alone, of the woman he once loved and buried under the oak tree behind the cabin. "Ain't much left for me now," he admitted once, staring into the flames. "Guess I just keep helping folks who can't help themselves. Gives me a reason to keep going." And Tala listened, though her pride burned. In Apache law, a warrior who couldn't ride or fight was dead in spirit. Yet, this cowboy, this stranger, treated her like she still mattered. One night, she woke to find him carving something from wood at the table. "What you doing?" she asked weakly. He glanced at her and smiled faintly. "Making legs," he said. "You'll need 'em if you plan on walking again." She stared at him, disbelief softening into tears. "You don't know me," she whispered. Samuel's eyes met hers, steady, kind, unshaken. "Don't need to," he said. "You're alive. That's enough." For the first time since her tribe abandoned her, Tala closed her eyes, not in pain, but in peace. Winter came early that year, brushing the plains of Arizona with cold winds that whistled through the canyons. Tala had begun to heal, though her scars still burned in the night. Every morning, Samuel would help her sit by the window where sunlight poured in through the cracks of the cabin walls. There, she could see the horses running across the fenced field, free, wild, and untamed. She often stared at them for hours, her eyes reflecting both longing and sorrow. Samuel noticed it. One day, as he placed a wooden box beside her, he said, "You keep looking at those horses like you used to be one." Tala smiled faintly, her lips trembling. "Once, I was faster than any of them," she whispered. "Now I am like a bird with no wings." Samuel didn't respond. He just opened the box. Inside lay 2 carefully carved wooden legs. They weren't perfect, but they were strong, built with skill and patience. "They ain't much," he said quietly, "but they'll get you walking again." For a moment, Tala just stared. She couldn't believe what she saw. No man had ever done such a thing for her, not even from her own tribe. When Samuel gently lifted her to fit the wooden limbs, she clenched her jaw to hide the pain. But the fire in her spirit had awoken again. Day after day, they worked together. Samuel built rails around the cabin yard so she could practice walking. She fell often, scraping her palms, bleeding anew, yet she refused to quit. Each fall only hardened her will. "Easy now," Samuel would say, standing beside her. "Ain't about how many times you fall. It's how you get back up." "Then, I am learning well," she'd answer, forcing a breathless laugh through her pain. Over the weeks, she began to move more steadily. Her steps grew firmer, her balance surer. The day she finally walked from the door to the barn without falling, Samuel took off his hat and smiled. "Told ya," he said, "you're tougher than half the men I ever rode with." That night, as the sky turned violet, Tala sat by the fire, while Samuel tuned an old guitar. He played softly, a tune from his youth, filled with loneliness and longing. She listened, her eyes glistening. "You have no wife, no kin," she said quietly. "Why help me, Samuel Hayes?" He paused, the music fading. "Guess I got tired of losing folks," he murmured. "You showed up half dead and still fight. Reminded me what it means to live." For the first time, she reached out, placing her hand over his. "Then we both learned to live again," she said. Outside, snow began to fall gently on the plains. 2 lost souls, sharing warmth in a cold world. Healing not from blood or bone, but from kindness and hope. Samuel looked at her, no longer seeing a broken warrior, but a survivor reborn. Spring returned to the valley like a gentle sigh, melting the last of the snow and bringing new life to the ranch. Wildflowers painted the plains, and the air smelled of rain and soil. Tala had changed, no longer the broken woman Samuel found beneath the cliffs. She now stood tall, walking with her wooden legs like they were born from her spirit itself. Every morning, she helped Samuel with the horses. The animals trusted her now, especially a young colt she named Spirit Dancer. The creature was wild and stubborn, just as she once was. "He's got your temper," Samuel teased as she coaxed the horse gently with her hand. "And your patience," she replied, smiling for the first time without pain shadowing her eyes. Their days passed quietly but full of meaning. Samuel began to talk more about his past, the ranch he'd built after losing his wife and son to fever, the empty nights that had haunted him for years. Tala listened, sometimes placing her hand on his arm when words grew too heavy. "You carried your sorrow alone," she said, one evening, as the firelight flickered across their faces. "Now it carries both of us." He looked at her, eyes deep as the desert night. "Guess that's what folks like us do, we patch what's left and keep on living." But not everyone approved of what they'd become. When Samuel rode into town one day for supplies, the whispers followed him. That crippled Apache woman, living with him. The Old West had never been kind to those who crossed its invisible lines. He ignored them, but when he returned, he found Tala waiting.